And thank you for staying with us here on The Pulse. Now, we've brought you stories on how dealers in shea butter have seen a boom in their trade. And many people, of course, purchasing clothing to keep them warm since the Harmattan setting. Today, of course, we've been to town, we've been to the Circle station, to speak to some commercial drivers who use the Aburi Koforidua Road on how they are coping with the Harmattan. The fog is terrible. Listen to what they tell us.
The Harmattan season has set in, and aside leaving us with cracked lips and very dry bodies, there's one thing that's of concern to a lot of motorists. That's road safety and visibility. So I'm here at Circle, and I'm here to speak to some of the drivers who ply the Aburi Koforidua Road. The Harmattan, or the fog there, is very, very dense and thick. Let's find out from some of these drivers how they're coping with this weather. Me pache your friend saying.
Me pache your friend Koforidua-Aburi. I do do na friend Jordan.
All right, Jordan. Now, I'm fear saying in a while you so Aburi kwano. And I hefa pote na ya oko.
Me pache me Koforidua driver. Me ba kwano so 6 years ni. Na pache Harmattan ya by the white idura no pasa na na ba na. You hwe into white you know e kwano white lane na de hwe na they are driving. Na ba si say no bebre so apepa free kwano tike be anke esre mo an say momwa na nka omomfa me yansana say be ya esan bia intimate to ye.
All right, so Jordan has been telling me that he's been using the Accra Koforidua route for about 6 years now, and he says that at this time of the season, when they're coming at dawn, the fog is very dense, so they usually use the white markings on the roads. Unfortunately, most of those white markings have faded, and so it's really difficult for them when they're driving at this time of the year, especially at dawn. And so he's asking that those responsible, the Roads and Highways Authority, come to fix those white markings so that they're able to see, so there's no tragedy. But Jordan, I'm going to ask him now what they do to cope since the white markings are not there. Into Jordan, see white markings ni ho. Into see and then I'm here to help yourselves as drivers and the people and passengers na ya muni omonam no.
Who say kwan ya fast watch. Into ya dwen kakra ne Nyankopon ehon ban a de born into na my etumi yan kakra ne ya the patients for na bedura sumbi.
All right. He adds that for now, since the white markings are not available, they use experience and God's grace to cope, and they're very familiar with the route, so they're just trusting that no tragedy will occur as they use their experience and trust God to guide them through. Finally, you find say reflectors, lights. And I say, once a fog lights, those other essentials, now what kind of bit me about it's an oncoming vehicle. Send more drivers, more communicating.
Na ba who say a tisi kwam na bo na basana ya also higher who hwe ya madim ubon say bo ne basa ubon say more na ya so double nti say wo ba ubon say double ne so sana obi e hia ohun say minua na eba no na osu ohun say ni minua so na ebe sin atwam te e wo kwan na ubekọ nchama na no so aba be sin atwam.
Okay, he adds that they also use their lights. They put on the hazard. So it's usually around this time when you put on the highlights, it's very difficult to see. So they use the hazards, and so that they can communicate to oncoming vehicles that they are approaching themselves, and so that's how they stay safe. So I'll speak to a few more drivers to find out from them how they're coping in this Harmattan season.
No question, they say, send you a bonus, kakra.
The fog makes driving on the Aburi Koforidua stretch very scary. If you don't drive carefully on that route during this period, you will not arrive safely. It's very scary, so I'd encourage drivers to be very careful. When my visibility is impaired, I drive very slowly and keep to my lane. I avoid going too much to the edge or moving to the middle of the road.
I'm Namboko. Min konchen bebre, and I'm in my fin so bebre.
And I pay my drivers in the bear for now, Baby Julia. No more banner, how much I send your bonus city and ordering.
About 4 drivers have arrived from Koforidua this morning. According to them, the fog is very high, so if your lights are not good, you could have problems. There are a lot of curves on the Aburi Koforidua road, so a driver who is not familiar with the road can have an accident. The drivers who are not familiar with the road are being told to use the Suhum Koforidua road. We are appealing with those responsible to fix the white lanes on the road so we can clearly know which routes to use.
It's white lane, no, and also I'm going to in my pepe. No, almost on to
Well, I can confirm as a driver myself that it's been terrible over the last few days. I was in Adan a few days ago and traveling back, the road was, you couldn't see beyond 500 meters or so. That's how bad it was. Joining me in the studio is Nana Anoamehe, president of the Ghana Institute of Safety and Environmental Professionals. Nana, thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure.
I don't know if you've noticed how bad the Harmattan is recently.
Yeah, it's extremely. Within the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's just taken over the.
Yes.
I mean, and the drivers are complaining. But is there something wrong with our roads? Because I know elsewhere, with the coming change of season comes different road markings, etc., etc. Because they know. I mean, you have to change your tire, for example, if
Yes.
you are in winter.
Yes.
They have special vehicles that will
Yes.
go onto the road to plow the road for you because it's winter. If it's raining, it's a rainy season. Why don't we have one size fit all, regardless of the weather, rainy, Harmattan? Is there a problem with the way we've
You
set
see,
up our roads?
sometimes we talk about some of these things and you become fatigued. You know, we only have 2 seasons for crying out loud in Ghana.
Yes.
2 seasons, just the dry season and the rainy season.
Yeah,
There are some places where people are crying for the rain. They don't have the rain.
yeah.
So they pray to have the rains. Here, when it rains, you have problems.
Yeah.
Either you have flooding that will take away lives. When the dry season comes, we also have problems. The dry season we know comes with the Harmattan.
That's true.
And as you said, you know, we tend to cry to the politicians to give us roads. And the politicians also try their best to satisfy their customers, the traditional rulers. Anytime the president goes to meet a traditional ruler, oh, we want roads. Now we are moving away from the graveled road to asphalted road. And with it comes with line markings. You know, I would always equate it to like when somebody says, I want a house, build me a house. You build a house. And when you finish the house, you build a structure, but you don't put a roof on it. And that's what most times the government or the politicians are giving us. They will build a road, but the 2% remainder of the road is not completed. But then we are happy that, oh, we've got a road coming down our village, and we hail the politicians for it. But what it means is that for navigation purposes, you know, the line marking is there for a purpose. That's why when you move the road from graveled road, which of course even in the night when it's pitch dark, you can still see the red. But with asphalted road, you cannot see them in the night. You know, especially when we don't have lighting on our roads and the driver throws his headlights on you. You're dazzled. You can't see anything. But what happens is that when somebody throws light at you, you look down, don't you? Naturally. When you look down, what the retroflective thermoplastic line marking is doing is to guide you. And you must have, Ghana, we do a lot of shoddy work and cut corners. The line marking, you have the central line marking and you have the edge marking. Both are very important in navigation on the roads. The edge marking, when you're veering off the road, it will guide you when it's pitch dark. And the same as the central line marking, because it's a single two-file traffic, it will then guide you against the opposing traffic to avoid head-on collisions. But we know all these things. The roads and highways, the urban roads, the Department of Federal Roads, they all know it. But why aren't they doing it?
Because I drive on the road this past holidays, and I'm thinking to myself, what would have really helped was some reflectors on the road, something that I could make out, even if I can't see beyond a certain distance. Once my light strikes it, it gives me sort of a reflection that could guide me. But that was in the road, and so I tell friends that in Ghana, when you drive by faith and not by sight, which is what happens.
You know, surprisingly, you see, we this country called Ghana, We are blessed with resources. About 6 years ago, I went to Dakar in Senegal. And what I saw there, I was so amazed that the roads, you know, in road safety, you have something we call cat's eye. You know, the things that you see in the nighttime, that are on the road,
that's true.
That throws up light.
Yeah.
Okay? It's called cat eye. The Americans call it stars, but the British is cat's eye. Most of the principal roads were all lined, the central line marking had cat's eyes, and the edge markings also have cat's eyes. And what it is that, you know, when you're veering off your lane to the other lane, the cat's eyes, the studs, will make noise. So whether even if you're asleep or you go off, it will wake you up. Same way, if you're going off the road, the edge marking will be there. And if poor Senegal, which only relies on tourism, the only mainstay revenue is tourism, can do that on their principal roads, why you can't do that in even ceremonial street? Look at the ceremonial street from Tetekwashi down to where the Jubilee House is. We don't have such lane marking. The road itself has expired. It needs you know,
that stretch is so bumpy.
It's so you know, there's something called ratting. When the road is expired and it needs rehabilitation, that's what you get. And the danger is that when it rains heavily, that you get this ratio. And there's something you call aquaplaning. When you're driving on it and you're not careful, you brake, you don't have any brakes, because the grooves in your tire that would displace the water for your brakes to be effective becomes non-existent.
I mean, I'm happy you mentioned that particular road, because each time, even when it hasn't rained, I find it very difficult to control my wheel, because the road is horrible. I don't know how to describe it, but you can't seem to go in a straight line. There's something about the unevenness of the road that pulls you to one side or the other. You have to be very conscious of controlling the wheel on that particular stretch, getting close to the 37 military office.
Yeah, Evans, you know what it tells me, that you're driving the vehicle with a wider wheel.
Yeah.
You see, because if you have the average 16-inch whatever, my car is a 21-inch tire. So I also feel the same way when I'm driving, as if there's something wrong with my bearings or what have you. So I always have to hold, otherwise it will toss you. It's because of the ratting on the road. So all these things, I mean, our road network, the cost of building 1 kilometer road in our country, we hear is $1.5 million. Whereas the African Development Bank, the survey that they brought out about 6 months ago says that the cost of building road, it doesn't matter which country, average $600,000 per square meter. But here, we have a whopping $1.5 million per kilometer, and yet the finishing touches that we need to put on the 1 kilometer that is costing us $1.5 million, we don't do that. And then that is what you see will bring a lot of carnage on the road. Look, when you're coming to a T junction, normally a T junction have a double line marked there, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
But here, you tell me, go on any street in Accra and go and check if there's any line at all for T junctions. So most times these taxi drivers or the Trotskys, when they are driving on the road, when they are entering a T junction, because there's no stop there, they don't stop. They just go. So you on the main road, which have a right of way, they don't yield to you, or you don't yield to them for them to cross. They come and you hit them, and then there's a conflict. Yeah. So some of these things we need to do a lot of advocacy on them, highlight them. And the last 2 years, you know, I started talking about central line markings and whatever. It was all on the social media. And lo and behold, the last probably year, we heard that, you saw that government was then trying to do a lot of those markings in Accra. But then at some point in time, it stopped. Let's go into airport, what do you call it, the only motorway we have, the Accra-Tema motorway. I can see the last 10 years, that has not seen one lick of paint. And what I heard from roads and highways that they were going to put cold paint on it. That will cost about what $2 per linear meter. And I said, "What? You've waited for goodness knows 10 years, 8 years. There have never been one lick of paint on the Tema motorway. Now that you hear you have given out a contract or you sign an agreement to rehabilitate the whole Tema motorway, which has been expired since 2014. So where lies in the prudence that you want to now come and spend $2 per linear meter to do the marking, and if it's 18 kilometers, you work out the sums, crunch the numbers, it will be a total waste of time. So the culture of doing things here, we are always like the proverbial kokosachi. We know the season is coming. Instead of preparing for the season, we don't. We wait.
And just on that same point, you just said the drivers are complaining that they're traveling to the Aburi, the Koforidua. And if you know that road, there's a peculiar...
Yes, which has a mist.
Yeah, I mean, because of it's hilly and etc. So you have, the mist will be, even on a regular day, it's misty already.
Yes.
No, let more Harmattan. And my point to the drivers will be, they've been using this road for years. In the Harmattan, this is not the first time they experience Harmattan.
Yes.
A lot of them don't have fog lights. They don't have fog lights. And so they're driving, and that's the thing you're talking about respecting the seasons. The season is coming.
Yes.
You definitely need a fog light.
Yeah, but that is the job of the DVLA.
They're not implementing it. They're not implementing it.
There's so many things, there's so much that is wrong with DVLA. Seriously. Most of the laws are there, but it comes down to enforcement. The basic things, like as you were talking about, even, what do you call it, these wipers. When it comes to the season where there's so much mist, you go and check out the drivers that were complaining, whether they are even their basic thing like wiper, which doesn't cost a lot of money, whether they are in good condition. They are not. So the examination, the checklist of DVLA is quite stringent. It's as good as the MOT you do in the UK. But when it comes here, I mean, like I see tinted V8s on the roads. The law says that the transmittance of light should not be less than 70%. Okay, but you see all the V8s that when you sit in, you cannot be seen, and the person in there is like a fugitive. But the law does not allow transmitters of light of less than 70%. The minimum should be 70%, not less than 70%. Because if it's less than 70%, you cannot see the occupant of the vehicle. But they go and the DVLA pass them all the time. So if they go out there and you do not comply with the rules and the regulations, and you're not given a certificate of roadworthiness, would you be able to apply the road? But here, I made a point only yesterday that because we are poor, and the politicians think that they must do something to placate the citizenry, so we import vans into this country, vans that's supposed to carry goods, light goods, into this country to come and carry human beings, just to be converted and put in rickety seats in the vans, and they will convert them into buses without any standards. So what standards? Everything in this world that has to be consumed by human beings or by even animals must conform to some sort of standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
But here, what are we doing? So those things have to be looked into, that we do not bring vans that are designed to carry light goods, to carry human beings. Naturally, when there's a crash, instead of the metals, which are collapsible metals, that are used to make these seats in the buses, here we don't have those collapsible metals to be able to cushion the impact of a crash when somebody who is in the vehicle have this secondary collision with a rickety seat in the bus. So some of these things, they add up to all the casualties and the fatalities that we have on our roads. So really, if you want to avoid some of these things, we really need to take steps and make interventions to forestall some of these.
You know, some may suggest that it's a case of we don't have the resources to make these things right. So, for example, the road is bad, correct it, we don't have it. You talk about the cat's eye, we don't probably have the resources to...
The cat size.
To install them. I mean, the drivers will tell you, I mean, these things that we are asking them to do, they're expensive. They don't have the money to do it, and therefore they might not do it. Isn't that part of the problem?
Well, I don't, Ghana, we are blessed with money. I don't know, it's just how we use the monies. Because if we are using $1.5 million to do a kilometer of road, that should be able to encompass everything that you need to do on that road. So when we push the issue down to, or the challenge down to lack of money, I don't get it. And you see, you have been in the States and all over the world. Some of these revenues that can be generated by errant drivers or drivers who do not want to obey the law, you can use that avenue, like in the state. If you're the speed limit is supposed to be 55 miles an hour. If you go over 60 miles, you will not even go 2 kilometers. You'll be arrested.
That's true.
And you'll be given a ticket. So that revenue that will be generated, you plow that money back
But the police officers are on the road stopping us with speed guns, etc., etc. And I have a sneaky feeling that the speed guns themselves are rigged because sometimes you know you are below it, and yet it gives you, it shows it to you, and you know you're below it. It's happened to me several times. I mean, isn't that part of the problem? We don't even trust our officers to implement this. I was in the States recently, as you said, and I was traveling long distance, 2 hours. This is a suburban vehicle, very good luxury vehicle. There were only 2 of us in the vehicle. The driver was going, well, it was supposed to be 50 miles an hour.
55, I think.
Yeah, 55, and it was constantly under it.
Yes.
And there was no policeman on the road. And I'm like, this is a good guy. Hit 80 and let's go.
Let's go. Put your foot down.
You know what I mean? And he kept on going, but we got there. And I was thinking to myself, I can't do this in Ghana.
Yeah.
But it's also because he knows that there'll be consequences if it goes up beyond it. But I know here, the consequences are literally non-existent because the police officer might, instead of punishing you for what you've done, would rather want money from you.
Yes, you see, why the driver was conforming to the speed limit is because we have moved away from human interface in the US. All these things, they've just hidden the cameras so obfuscated them so much that you will not even know where the camera is. But somewhere along the line, you know that you've stepped over the limit, you'll be caught. So this using the police, which is old methods of checking the speed limits, is long gone. So the investment that we should make, which will pay for itself.
It's in technology.
It's in technology. Yeah. And so we should, I mean, the last 3-4 years, there's been a talk about bringing the spot fines and what have you. But the spot fine, for it to be effective, you must have the appropriate infrastructure in place before it becomes effective.
Where do you even find me?
Where do you find? You see, the people have used the argument of what do you call it, addresses as an excuse. No, there's no excuse. You see, we have to think outside the box. In Ghana, luckily, we have a biological registration. Okay, for electoral register, everything you want to do, they take your biological footprint or whatever they call it. Now, this idea of addresses, telephone number. If you go to DVLA to register or for a license and they take your telephone number, that you have even 2 numbers, let's say even 3 numbers, it's all been captured. Okay, so if they want to track you, these days you have GPS on telephones and whatever. So if you have committed an offense and you've been sent a ticket and you have not paid, you can run, but you cannot hide. The GPS will catch you.
Let's do something else that is of concern, especially during the period of Christmas, etc., and the New Year. Researchers from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, UK, say a recent survey undertaken in Ghana's capital, Accra, reveals that at least 80% of all salad foods sold in the open market, including hotels and restaurants, contain some amount of feces. Now, even more worrying is the discovery that those who buy those foods pay little attention to hygiene. The report by a team of international scientists is published in the international peer-reviewed journal PLOS 1 and also in the Journal of Science and Technology. Now, Lab FM's Kwesi Deborah has more in a following report.
This food may be helpful, but I certainly did not buy this food because of health. I actually bought it because of taste. And I guess there's the problem of many Ghanaians. Researchers undertook separate exercises in Accra between September and December 2012, as well as June to August 2013. They collected lettuce, soil and water samples from 3 wastewater irrigated fields. The team also sampled salad vegetables from 3 central markets and also processed ready-to-eat salad from 80 street vending stores and restaurants. All collected samples were tested for the presence and levels of a type of bacteria known as Escherichia coli. Interestingly, the researchers found 46% of people who eat outside buy food for taste, and 19% because of convenience or proximity to vending site. Even for domestic cooking, the choice of foodstuffs and items were influenced by factors other than health. While 28% were based on friendship and 20% on good price, only 1.5% considered clean environment of the vending site. According to the study, 98% of salad samples prepared by street food vendors were contaminated with bacteria known as Escherichia coli, which causes food poisoning. Dr. Prince Nchejei is a lead researcher with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, UK.
My results show that 80%, irrespective of where it was taken, was contaminated by E. coli. E. coli is an indicator organism. Whenever you find E. coli in food, it tells you that we have fecal pollution in that particular sample, in this case food. But for the 4 domains, that's at farm, markets, street vending sites and at hotels, the highest risk was found at the street vending sites. Technically, the number of E. coli, we found about more in excess of 4 log. In 4 log means almost like 10 raised to the power 4, so about 10,000 E. coli in just 1 gram of the street vended salad. So that one was for the risk part. Then for the perception one, so I was trying to find out whether if people are made aware of the fact that the produce that they consume is wastewater irrigated, will it actually influence their consumption pattern or even their buying pattern for whether prepared salad or the unprepared or the raw produce at the market. And what I found was that at the street vending sites, consumers were actually motivated to buy the check normally based on taste and convenience. Only about 2% of consumers, and I interviewed about 160 street consumers for street vended salad, that's check, and about only 2% of them actually considered health indicators when like choosing one street vendor from the other in case of buying the salad.
90% of these salad samples were considered unsatisfactory for consumption based on Ghana Food and Drugs Authority food safety standards. Less contaminated salad was found in restaurants with valid hygiene certificate, though 60% of salads sold at these restaurants were also unsatisfactory for consumption based on FDA food safety standards.
Technically, E. coli can be classified as an indicator organism. An indicator organism only shows that if you find any indicator organisms in a food sample, it tells you, the consumer, that that particular food sample or particle has been polluted by feces. So in this case, it can be human feces or animal feces. So it's basically you are consuming feces. Even though it signifies the E. coli is an indicator organism and it signifies the presence of fecal matter or fecal pollution, it does not necessarily signify disease risks. or infection risks. On the other hand, it signifies or it tells the researcher that there is likely to be other pathogens, like in that sample, E. coli and all the other pathogens that can be found in food, salmonella and co. that can be found in food. The commonest disease that they give to consumers is diarrhea disease. But let me also stress the point that if I did this particular study in collaboration with the Food and Drugs Authority of Ghana, and they have a standard which is in line with international standard. And in the Ghana standard, for food that can be consumed uncooked, that's if you want to consume it raw, then you shouldn't find E. coli in excess of 100 or 2 log. So if you find 2 log E. coli or 100 in absolute terms, 100 E. coli, then the food, according to the Ghana standards, is considered unsatisfactory for consumption. Based on the Ghana standard, and in my study, about 90% of the street vended salad that I sampled will be considered as unsatisfactory because all of them had quantity levels of E. coli exceeding that 2 log or the 100. About 60% of the salad that I pick from hotels and restaurants in Accra will also be considered as unsatisfactory for consumption because they also had levels exceeding what the Ghana Food and Drugs Authority recommends for consumption.
For regulators, the research team recommends intensify hygiene inspection and monitoring. The study also prescribes certification and improve environmental and food hygiene practices.
2 recommendations: you'd use disinfectants, and in this case salt and vinegar, which are the commonest one, and they are also cheap like to come by. Or you also remove the outer leaves because most of these pathogens or microorganisms, they stay outside the leaf. So if you remove the outside, then at least you reduce your risk of consuming like a vegetable containing these microorganisms. At the street vending sites, they use disinfectant all right, but it becomes ineffective because of the environmental exposures and the fact that they also prepare this salad in bulk from the house and bring it to the vending sites. And when they bring it to the vending sites, they normally leave it open. In my study, I studied every food vendor for 3 good hours. On average, they could leave this their salad uncovered for almost like 100 minutes. So whenever you have cuts or slices of food, its ability to attract microorganisms is more than when you have the food in contact. So since you have poor environmental conditions, they add on to the contaminants. So even when they disinfect it with vinegar and other things, it still doesn't become effective.
Consumers can also contribute significantly to restoring food safety by buying food only from those who adhere to hygienic practices. Reporting for Joy News, Kwesi Debra.
Well, in the studio with us is Maria Abba Lovelace Johnson, head of food, the food safety at the Food and Drugs Authority, to help us with some understanding of how we can deal with this challenge. Thank you, Maria, for your time here on the Pulse. This sounds pretty familiar. I mean, the thing about vegetables, etc., containing feces, etc. I mean, how worried should we be about stuff like that?
Thank you very much. We have to be very worried about it because really from the studies that were conducted and from what we all know, these vegetables are irrigated with wastewater. And there is something they have to do actually as far as the wastewater irrigation is concerned. They actually have to stop the irrigation of the products 2 weeks before harvest. That kind of minimizes the extent of contamination. And also, we have something we call hazard analysis critical control points. That's HACCP in the food industry or in the food arena. It's for the layman, it's just something that at every point or at every stage in the food chain, one has to do all one can do to minimize the contamination to the barest level, or eliminate it completely. So if you are the grower, you have to do what you have to do to ensure that the microorganisms or whatever hazards that there are will be reduced to the barest minimum or eliminated completely. If you are the transporter, you do the same. If you are the producer, you do the same. So if everybody minimizes at the level that the product gets into one's hands, then at the end of the day, we're going to get the very minimum level of microorganisms. So that is to say, by the time it gets to the salad preparer or the food processor, then it has been reduced to a very minimum level, and the food processor has to reduce it further by disinfecting and washing.
It's clear from the report that what you're saying is not happening. So what is the FDA doing about that?
Public education. It's all education, education, and education.
What about enforcement? I mean, those who are growing them and
yeah, we're doing enforcement as well. But some of the things, you know, it's better when the people really appreciate it. Because even the consumers, you cannot even go and enforce the laws in the homes of the consumers.
But if the thing is clean from source, then
no,
I'm
every level,
safe.
right, from source, yes. I was just telling you about the 2 weeks before harvesting. So, and then there is the post-process, post-harvest contamination as well. So someone is even transporting, and then that becomes the drivers and all that. So what happens then too? We do some enforcement and we do education too. We need to let whoever is even transporting to appreciate it, such that, let's say, if vegetables are just being thrown on the ground, it will not be tipped off from the truck. You know, when they just get to the market, they just tip it off and then get a heap of vegetables as if that's a heap of sand. Then it gets to the retailer. What's the retailer also doing? Is the retailer selling it up and above the ground? That it should be at least some 1.5 inches or 2 inches above the ground. And then from the retailer, the one who is even buying. Are you going to buy something that is displayed on the floor, on the wet, dirty floor? So the consumer has to even know that, no, this has a problem. So I have to buy those that are sold on tables or not displayed on the ground. Then it gets to whoever is going to do the processing to do the disinfection. So it's a collective responsibility. Yes, we are doing the enforcement, but the education goes better because people then appreciate the consequences of their actions.
And we know that manure is such an integral part. It's not an integral part of growing any crop. In other words, we really can do without such, you know, ways of growing a crop, such as manure, dirty water, whatever you call it. I mean, so you've talked about 2 weeks before harvest.
Yes.
Stop using it. And this is part of the education, really.
Yes.
Unfortunately, those who be growing the vegetables by the gutter that we see will not be listening to us on television.
Who knows? They may be communicated to by.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just curious. What ways are you pursuing the education? Is it going down to them and talking to them?
Yes,
on a one-on-one basis?
We go down to them and talk to them. We go to various marketplaces, lorry stations, everywhere we are there. We even mount buses because travelers are really people who buy anything they come across. You can see a traveler buying hot salad. And when I say hot salad, it shouldn't be. Salads have to be cold. Salads are prepared at about 4 a.m. and then you see a traveler in a Neoplan bus buying salad at about 10 a.m. Meanwhile, the salad was prepared at 4 a.m. Sometimes even as late as 2 p.m. And you can see in the polythene bag in which the bread and salad is, that there is condensation because it's been sold in the hot sun and then there is condensation. You can see, as a layman will say, you see sweating in the polythene, and that's the condensation. It's an indication of the fact that the thing is hot. There is heat in there, and the salad is right in there, and the person will buy that salad. Halfway through the journey, the person has a driver to stop somewhere, and then just to take care of the diarrhea and whatever that is, and then the vomiting and all that's the person is suffering from right there. So we try and explain to them. We try and tell them what they should do and what they shouldn't do.
A part of this is also imported, correct? Because you have imported salads into the country. I mean, leaves.
Yeah, we do have some. Yes, we do have some.
Because so far we've had a conversation about what we grow locally.
Yeah.
What about those that we bring into the country from outside?
Well, the Ministry of Agriculture is basically in collaboration with the FDA actually is responsible for that. We have them coming in really, and when things are coming in, we test for all that has to be tested for, all that have to be tested for, like the maximum residual limits. Actually, your study is on the microbiological aspects.
Okay.
We have other things that are even scarier, if I should put it that way,
such as?
Like the residual limits, the pesticides that were applied on the products. You know, they do that sometimes indiscriminately. And the Ministry of Food and Agriculture really has extension officers who educate them as to how they should use the pesticides and all that. So really, we test, at the end of the day, we test for the maximum residual limits. Every product has, or every chemical has a residual limit that should be maximum. It shouldn't exceed a certain limit. If it does, then there is a problem and the consequences could be bad. So we test for all that when they are coming in.
Okay, great. And so now that this has become public, I'm sure people, just word of for those who, and we are in a festive season, people will be cooking a lot with these things. What should they be doing?
They should be disinfecting the products. It's very salty water. When we talk of salty water, not just salt and water, and it should be so salty that you should see that it has reached the saturation point. You see, the salt doesn't even dissolve again. You see the salt in it. I mean, it's gotten to the saturation point. Then you know that, at least because you cannot measure. So that's one way of, that's a visible measurement actually. So you see it's very saturated. Then you know that as much as possible, you've taken care of all the microorganisms that are not halo tolerant. That is, those that cannot withstand salt. Unfortunately, Vibrio cholerae, the one that causes cholera, can even withstand salt. So, but quite a number cannot withstand salt. So you eliminate all of them. And then you can add vinegar. Vinegar is acetic acid, it's acidic. So the one too will take care of the microorganisms. And then from there, you know you have done as much
then
as
you wash it with ordinary water to then sort of wash it
you
off?
You can do the washing first with whatever, do your salt, then you leave the vinegar thing. With the vinegar, you don't need to get it off. It can be there. You don't need to. That can be the last one.
Okay.
You don't need to.
So people must do this for every leaf that they intend to cook.
Every leaf. That's once, the heating, it's something that is microbicidal, and that's to say it kills the microorganisms. So once the product is not going to go through heat application, then you know that you have a problem.
That's true.
Because it is a raw material that's going to be ingested, you cannot boil it. Yeah. So then you have to do all you can to be able to eliminate the microorganisms completely or reduce them to the barest
Controversial
minimum.
one. People like wache in leaves. What about the leaf that we use for the wache? Because you go for the wache salad, they take the thing and they use the leaf, the rag to clean it, and then
one thing about salads, especially around this festive period, nobody should eat salad that is not served cold. Okay. Unless you are preparing it yourself in your own kitchen. Yeah. So freshly prepared and then you eat it. You get to a party and they are selling salads and the salad is not served on ice. Please just move away from it because that could be a recipe for disaster because it has to be served cold. Once you leave the salad at the ambient temperature, all the microorganisms there, they will grow, they will multiply, they will produce toxins and all that. Mind you, all that you are going to do to take care of the microorganisms by way of either elimination or reduction to the barest minimum. Sometimes it might not be elimination, it's reduction to the barest minimum. So there might be very little there that will not be harmful though. But as soon as you leave the product for a certain amount of time or for a certain number of hours or some minutes and at a certain temperature, That's the ambient temperature. They like temperatures that are between 5 degrees to 60 degrees Celsius. And that's this ambient temperature we are in as part of it. So it has to be below every food, actually. So the wache should be piping hot above 60 degrees Celsius. Piping hot, you see the steam coming out. And then the salad should be very, very cold.
What about the leaf they use? The wache leaf, the leaf.
Oh, you mean the leaf for packaging and all
yes.
that? In fact, we don't even need to tell anybody that. That is not hygienic.
Wache tastes sweeter than the leaf.
You see, that is the thing about Ghanaians. And that, I mean, really, that's a bad thing about Ghanaians. We just go like, yes, waches taste sweeter. Street food tastes. You will tell us street food tastes nicer. I mean, the ones sold by the gutter. You know, but that makes the work of the food regulator difficult.
Yeah.
So we don't smile at such jokes actually. Like the one who brought food hygiene into the world was killed by a refuse dump car or something, a refuse collection car. I mean, it's really not pleasant.
Yeah.
African James don't kill. It's not pleasant.
Yeah. There's another key question, and again, this is lifestyle. The check joints. I mean, you see the way they do their salad. They mix it in its heat. In fact, there's no cold there. They mix it and it's warm and it's sitting on the pan and they add all these things and they serve it to you.
And hey, some time ago, they would even use their hands to break the chicken.
Yeah.
I mean, they would do the full chicken and their hands for chicken parts. They would take the thigh, they would take, and it was terrible. And people.
Well, what sort of regulation, though, are we, for those who sell by the roadside like that?
We do a lot of public education with them, and we do some enforcement as well. But then it is very difficult as far as the enforcement is concerned, in the sense that their preparation site is different from their vending sites. So we thought of licensing them some time ago, about 5 years ago. We're thinking of just getting them licenses and all that and putting them either on their tables or hanging them in their necks. But you see, if we inspect the vending site and it is okay, what about the preparation sites? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
It has to be both of them. And these people, sometimes due to the nature of the business, they are very itinerant anyway. Some are just walking and then the next day you see the kiosk here, the next time in another place and all that. So it makes it very, very difficult. So we embark on a lot of public education so as to appeal to their consciences, so as to get them to understand the consequences of their actions. Because really and truly, they do not understand the consequences of their actions. Because they eat some thinking, well, oh, what is it? We've done this for years and there is nothing going to be wrong with us. But it is very dangerous. But back to your wache leaves. I mean, you go to the wache seller, this leaf was just plucked off a tree. I mean, you don't know what happened. I mean, dust and all that, bird droppings might have gotten onto the tree. Maybe some rain might wash it off anyway, the next thing. Anything at all. Some people may be even spitting and all that. I mean, at the farm, they do that. And then you get to the wache seller and she wraps it against a cloth. As to that cloth, as the number of leaves that have been wrapped there, what has been done with the cloth and all that, and they put it in. And you think that's going to give the wache flavor. Wache without leaves is not nice because it's not flavored. Please, I think we should really be food safety conscious. We should take food safety very, very, very serious. The reason why we don't take it serious in Ghana is that we do not have data on foodborne illnesses because people do not report foodborne illnesses. And the FDA has started vigorously doing the foodborne illness reporting and all that. So we're really asking people to even report the slightest foodborne illness they have. It is self-limiting, so the danger is, let me just do the vomiting, diarrhea after 2 days, 3 days, it will go on its own. Well, if I need to go somewhere, let me just get some Imodium or something of the sort and it will stop it. So they think they are fine. But the consequences are not the best if you keep having them. Sometimes you have a headache and you don't know it's due to that, or nausea. It's not always that, it's just vomiting and diarrhea.
Yeah. Maria, thank you very much for the education. And of course, in this time of a lot of eating and cooking, this is the best advice you can get out there. especially with a watch bit. I mean, forget about a leaf. Go for the safe one. Pack it. I mean, or take your own bowl from home that you know you washed. Safety first, I guess, is a mantra for this season. Thank you again, Maria, for your time. And still, you're on the pulse.